If you've been around marketing for any length of time, you're going to hear people say that you need to use stories and you need to tell stories. But what does that even mean and how can you do it? Welcome to B2B on Air. I'm your host, Joseph Lewin. And in today's episode, we're going to talk about the importance of your guests telling stories. Now, real quick, a little side note. Last week, I recorded an episode talking about how you need to just have grit and get through it even when it's difficult. And I work from home. My office is at home, and this is the end of the day on Friday when I'm recording this. And my family's waiting for me and getting ready to go to a dinner. And so there might be some kids around in the background, and that's life. And if you're going to do something sustainably, you got to figure out how to squeeze it in the little areas. One thing that took me quite a while to learn with podcasting is the value of story. So I've tended in the marketing that I do to focus very much on education and ideas and thoughts. And the longer that I've been doing marketing and the more that I've studied it, and even studying the types of marketing that I tend to interact with, that really gets me to actually buy from somebody. A lot of times it comes down to somebody telling a story that helped me to unlock something in my brain, or unlock trust with that person where I go, okay, wow, they really understand how this works, or they really get me. And it's that story that then gives me the trust with that person for me to believe in their idea enough to want to implement it. And in B2B marketing, especially in podcasting, there's this tendency to just lean very heavily into subject matter expertise and talking about theories and concepts. And I have talked about this a little bit before, but the podcasts that I've seen do the best are the ones where the guests tell stories and that are built around story. And the best podcast guests that I've had on tell stories. Let me give you an example. I did a live interview a couple months back with a guy named Kinney. So if you're listening to this episode, go to my LinkedIn profile, click on events, and go back and find the live show I did with Kinney, because he is the best podcast guest I've ever had on. What Derek does that's really impactful as a podcast guest is that he ties almost every single strategy, framework, or idea, and he ties that together with a specific story. And some of the stories he shared were real, and some of them were fictitious stories where he's pitting two kind of competing ideas against each other, but he's putting it into a real world scenario. And I was really blown away when I had him on as a guest at how much more engaged I was as the host, and how he pulled me in, and it let us have some really good back and forth conversation. A lot of the ideas that he shared stuck with me a lot more. I'm not only hearing the idea and the bullet points that he shared, but I can actually visualize the story that I had in my head while he was sharing his example. And he uses these phrases that help make that transition. So he'll share an idea, and then he'll go, let me give you an example. And then he'll share the story that brings that example to life. And so it engages different parts of the brain, and there's all kinds of science around that. Most of us in marketing have heard that before, but for some reason in B2B, we tend to just go back to strategies and tactics, which are okay. But if you really want people to remember it and engage, and you want to build an audience, those ideas have to be tied, and they're brought into the real world through story. So how do you do that as a podcast host? First, you get the person to share their framework or their idea or whatever. And then you can use a phrase like, tell me about a time when you implemented whatever the strategy is and how it worked for you. Or you could say, man, it sounds like you had some really crazy experiences with that. What was the scenario that led you to come up with that framework? Or, man, it sounds like you've had a lot of experience working through that. Did you have some kind of a negative experience or something bad that happened that gave you the light bulb moment for why XYZ was so important? And by asking those kinds of questions, you're now, instead of having to rely on the guest being amazing and an expert at storytelling, because a lot of them aren't, a lot of B2B experts aren't good at doing that, you're teeing them up to be able to be way more impactful and look a lot better because they're sharing their idea, and then you're facilitating them be able to tell that through a story. And so next time you're getting ready to have a podcast guest on, don't let them just drone on about their ideas, their point of view, but get them to share that point of view and illustrate it through a story by asking those good follow-up questions. And with that, thank you so much for tuning into this episode, and we'll see you on the next one.